Greetings, YouTube. Welcome to another episode of my hour-long-ish interview series. This is a highly requested episode with KT1. I really appreciate his ability to be willing to be interviewed. I know every time I ask questions, there's a few people who say, Prof, I really just want to be able to see their face. I'm sure they're flattered. I'm somewhat flattered. But you have to think, when you get interviewed for an hour, it's just more relaxing to just speak into a microphone. I think Katie Candy was like doing laundry when I talked to her. So it's just nice. Maybe you want to play the game while you get interviewed. I don't know. So that's why you're just seeing my webcam. I know it's not the easiest thing to look at, but it certainly is something that makes it more natural. And we are utilizing for the first time, not Skype, but Discord for this. So KT1, thank you again for helping me relearn Discord as well.
My pleasure.
And welcome. So there might be some people who tune into this who don't know who you are. So I like to start off these interviews with the basic question, how the heck did you hear about the game and when did you actually start playing it?
Well, I started playing it actually extremely shortly after it had been just released. So I wasn't part of the beta. I didn't know anything about that. But I downloaded it within like 2 months or something after it appeared in App Store. And the reason for that was I had just stopped playing Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. I actually used to play it for like nearly a decade since I was like in my teens, with periods on and off, and it's a trading card game. There are some online games about it as well, but the best thing about it was that, it has tournaments like all across the UK and stuff like that. And after I had moved to UK, after I had kind of settled in UK slightly, I just restarted playing it, and it being something that requires you to travel to tournaments and stuff like that, it was quite time consuming. And after I met my girlfriend, obviously, my interest kind of shifted, and I started spending pretty much all of my time with her, and I was not really able to play that card game that required me to travel to this city, to that city in that afternoon and stuff like that. On the weekends. And with that, I just was kind of looking for something to do, commuting to and back from work, or, in evenings when you get bored and stuff like that. So I stumbled upon this game.
So if I could go back in time to like that first week you downloaded it and tell you that years later this would be your life, would it be hard to believe?
Yeah, extremely hard.
Well,
would not believe you one bit.
That's pretty awesome. So how does it feel then to know that so many people are fans of your channel that they requested you to be interviewed for this series?
I mean, it's obviously flattering. That's all you can ever say about something like that. It's still kind of surreal at times when you see, a big live stream and how many people are viewing it at the same time, because it's quite hard to put it by comparison. I remember that my teenage years in like primary school or secondary school, it was extremely daunting to speak in front of a single classroom of like, 28, 30 people, let alone in some school event where you had a couple hundred people sitting in the auditorium. And I actually had quite a lot of issues with fear from groups of people. I never had problems speaking with a handful of people, but when it could be classed as a mob or a crowd, I guess is the best term, I used to have a lot of confidence issues, and I tackled it head on at end of 8th grade, I think 7th grade, by joining a debate club. And that's kind of like one of the stories how I overcame that. And it's, it's still part of you. It's always a part of you. It's within your personality to be nervous in front of large groups of people.
Sure.
But where I was going with that is that it used to be daunting to speak in front of 20, 30 people, but we have had streams with like 600,000, 700,000 people at the same time. And that's extremely surreal.
Yeah, well,
for the scale.
Congratulations on being able to overcome that. So before we get to the YouTube start of it, because I'm really fascinated, especially now that you've said that, were you instantly, because you said you started to download the game so you could have something to do in your commute to work, were you instantly trying to be competitive at like the top of the skill set of the game, or is that something that just kind of naturally progressed as you played more?
No, it didn't start like that at all. At first, I don't know, initial months, I wasn't like thinking about it at all. It's more a case of that you're, appetite grows whilst you're eating kind of thing. And as you get more into it, and as you spend more time with it, you want to be better at it, quite simply. And initially I downloaded it. That was before alliances existed, stuff like that. It was just very kind of casual. And then alliances became a thing, and Alliance Quest and Alliance Wars, one after another. And I had an alliance with just like my roommate at the time, and some random people we didn't know. And then eventually we realized that we're more active than rest of our alliance mates, so we together left to another alliance that was bigger, and then within a couple of months we outgrew that alliance and realized we're even more active than these people, and our accounts are like growing up bigger. And then we went to another alliance together, and then slowly but surely we ended up in, at that time, alliance that did map 5 AQ, which was like the highest map that you could do. And we actually had to both lie a bit, because everybody was looking only for people with a map 5 experience, and we had none. But then it still turned out that we handled ourselves just fine there, and we got into alliance that was at the time earning tier 4 class catalysts, which used to be that huge kind of wall. It used to be like huge divide, because before that there were no fragments. It was either, if you have tier 4 class catalysts, then you can earn more in Alliance Quest, or if you haven't earned those catalysts early on, there was no way to get there, really. And at that point, it was quite clear that I am fairly competitive at that game.
Yeah, so first off, I feel like your YouTube career might have been the same way, because you don't know if you're good at something until you push yourself, right? And everybody's going to be worse at something when they start.
Yeah, it was quite literally that type of thing where, initially when even parry came out, none of us could consistently land a parry, and the people who could seemed like wizards or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And once I started playing map 5, that was like a very huge confidence boost, because within first week I did my lanes just fine, didn't item out, didn't stop anybody and stuff like that. And then like second and third week I started mini boss and boss killing, and even the teammates who had been playing it all for longer and were these supposedly very big and skilled players were kind of taunting me as like the boss killer of the battle group or something like that. And at that point it was like, oh, okay.
So was that your aha moment when you realized, I'm actually kind of good at this game?
Yeah, pretty much. That was like about 2 weeks after I had joined the first alliance that did map 5.
So we're at that point where you realize you're kind of the boss killer of your alliance. You're taking a lead on being what I would consider to be, whoever the boss killer is in alliance is the best player amongst the people you can count on. How did you go from that to eventually thinking, well, now I kind of want to record content and do the YouTube thing?
Well, that thing happened much later. That happened several years later. I started recording content significantly later than pretty much anybody of the bigger channels, like all of the Rich Demand, Seaton, your channel, and whole Brian Grant and a whole bunch of other people had been going already for I think a couple of years by the time I recorded my first video. And well, big part of the reason is because I just didn't think I should be doing that. Another part of it was because I do have an accent, and a fairly thick one, so I thought people would make fun of it and stuff like that. But eventually I kind of just ran out of excuses why not to do it, because I was clearly spending quite a lot of time on the game, and I was interested in it. And also the biggest reason, I guess, was because I felt that I have a different perspective on many things. It might not necessarily, always lean in either direction completely. Some people really dislike champions or abilities or matchups that I do, or some people really like them, but I often have a fairly different opinion to the most published opinions of MCOC, let's say it like that.
Well, I think that's why you're so successful, because people know that you're going to tell them what you think regardless of whether or not they agree with you. And I think I've learned, at least on my channel, that overall that creates a more loyal fan base than if they think you're just a PR wing for Kabam, or the opposite, you're just a channel that exists to criticize Kabam for the sake of criticism.
Well, that is kind of like one of the more unfortunate things about my channel that I feel myself. A lot of people view me as a lot more negative channel towards kebab than I really am, just because they tend to watch the videos where, I criticize kebab for bad decisions. But if they do everything okay and I make a video, hey, this thing's cool, I like it, I'm like, yeah, but everybody says it's cool and they never watch that video. So naturally, they kind of create an impression where, this guy only likes to bash at kebab quite often. And I know that people who watch my videos more frequently do realize that that is not the case. But I do think that there is a part of community who thinks that, my job is basically just bashing at kebab indiscriminately, regardless what they do, which is quite frustrating at times. But, it kind of comes with the territory, because I think that goes much more with how people are in 2022 than it is for me personally. Disagreeing means hating, or if you're unhappy with something, that means you're toxic, or things like that. And there are genuinely people who primarily look for echo chambers, or who will kind of like either compliment you or acknowledge you if you say the things that they think, pretty much. But, that's kind of how internet has gotten in general, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, 100%. I mean, I've noticed the same thing on my channel. Unfortunately, there is an outrage addiction for people. Like, when somebody gets angry and they feel especially self-entitled to believing that they're right and someone's wrong, or they're on the side of good, and you see this a lot in politics, right? And the other side is evil. It creates the same level of dopamine in the brain that it would from, like, sexual pleasure. And
yeah,
so,
it's been like long proved that, negative news travel faster than positive, for instance, and stuff like that. And people are kind of fully into it right now. Like, I genuinely am trying my best to kind of like plant two of my legs on the ground and look at things that I like, things that I don't like. For instance, just like a quick example, for instance, the Summoner Choice 2022. Objectively in the video, when I was valuing the entire event, I said, like, they did it a lot better this year, system-wise. It was much easier to vote. It was kind of much clearer. There wasn't much hassle, pretty much anybody who wanted to vote could have voted without too much effort in it. It's much better than having arena or something else. In the same video, I also said that I was not interested in that event as much as I was last year, and I think that the champion choice kind of ruined the event, because putting in Quicksilver and Bay Bill, kind of switched off the lights for 90% of the players, because everybody kind of knew which ones are the likely ones to win. And I think both of those are perfectly reasonable criticisms. But, if you don't say that everything was perfect, then you're hating. Or if you're not always criticizing kebab about every single thing, then you're defending kebab. And ironically, I get both of those groups of people quite often angry at me. When they do something nice, I say, this is cool, this is a win. And there's going to be comments, this is not a win, we were owed this, or they should have done better and earlier. And if I'm going to make a video where I say kebab screwed up and I don't think they're doing well with this, then it's going to be like, of course, they're a gaming company, they need to make money, you need to understand them, you just won't want to be negative at them. And it's kind of an interesting place to be, where if you encourage people to actually think and break down everything that's happening one thing at a time, then both of the, I like to call them radicalized sides, get to have a swing at you.
Well, my message to you is the same message I have to my journalism students at Oklahoma State, and it's that if you're doing a good job, you're pissing off both sides. So you must be doing something right if both people are angry at you. Well, I wanted to jump into some questions, because we had over 80 questions submitted for this interview. So thank you to everybody who went to my community page and reached out. And the biggest question, I know this is kind of deviating from what we were just talking about, but it says, first off, this is from Super DDP MCOC. He's loved your content, huge fan. He says, if you just forget about Prestige, if that didn't exist, if that had no factor in your rank ups, who would be your next rank 4 and why?
I'm not entirely sure, because, I only think of this game through the prism that I have. But if I completely discard Prestige, then logically, I think it would probably be Nick Fury, because he's a champion that kind of really benefits from having that extra buffer zone by being rank 4, because often you play him at the 30%, benchmark when he enters real Nick Fury phase, and having that extended further, giving additional 5,000-6,000 health pool, that'd be quite useful. Or it could potentially be Moleman, just because I really, really enjoy using him. Or if I think ability-wise, which champion is used a ton and just needs a bit more oomph, potentially Warlock. So those are the 3 most likely ones.
Okay, well, there you go. Derrick, who said he was also really looking forward to this interview, wants to know what champs you would personally like to see added into the game.
Well, I hope for years, I used to say Jubilee. She got added, unfortunately, and this is like quite a sour
subject.
Sour subject for me.
Yeah.
I kind of wish she didn't, because she's nothing like I would have had hoped for her to be, at least ability-wise. And I'm not like enjoying or using her much, and she isn't like even that awful champion. I just really dislike the ideas behind design, and I kind of stayed off from that. But ever since Jubilee got added, and that was kind of like my one champion that I wished, I want Spot. It's a minor villain from Spider-Man. And for those of you who do not know, basically he kind of creates, well, he has a white suit that's covered with black spots. And he can put the black spots on everywhere, basically. And then he teleports from there to there. So he's kind of like a walking portal gun.
Oh, wow.
And it's a fairly minor villain, but I really, for some reason, do like the idea of his abilities and how it functions. And also the fact that he has those spots on his own body. So he can, like, reflect punches. If opponent hits in one of his black spots, he can literally throw that punch out of his face back at the opponent.
Wow.
Kind of thing. So he's quite quirky, funny champion. So I really would like to see him added. He looks interesting, and I like his abilities too.
So Derrick Carnes, there you go. There's your answer. Now, the next 2 questions that were the most liked weren't even really just questions, but I felt like, and by the way, I always am balanced in these interviews. I'm going to give a lot of praise where praise is due, but also if there's critical questions to the channel, we'll get to those too. Time Dorks said KT1 is an OG. Many people don't mention his name in that regards. Most people, including myself, used his Labyrinth of Legends map to explore it. He's definitely in the top 1% of greatest players. This will be a great interview. Looking forward to this. So he basically just wanted to thank you for your making the Labyrinth of Legends map as well. That was Time Dorks.
It was my pleasure. That was, I think, the one thing that I worked together with Trukos himself to push those out.
Wow, okay, so let's stop there, because I didn't know that. So I always know of Trukos as just like this ambient being who creates these incredible designed champion leagues or arena results. How did you get in touch with Trukos?
He actually got in touch with me, I think. But that was like years ago, years and years ago. That was before I even did YouTube.
Wow. So you were making content before you were making content. Slayer X319 says, not any question, just want to give him mad respect for always speaking the truth regardless of how much backlash he gets. He says all the things the players are thinking and all the things the CCP are too afraid to talk about. When everyone tries to sugarcoat things, KT says it straight up, whether Kabam or the players want to hear it or not. KT1 is Kabam's, he says you're Kabam's worst nightmare, which is funny because I know you don't want to be necessarily, as you've said.
Yeah, exactly. I genuinely don't want to. But I don't wake up, trying to be nasty to anybody.
Yeah. Well, he sees you as the community's unsung hero. He said that was Slayer X319.
But
so, yeah, again, it's fascinating to get those responses, right? Because on one hand, you're like, yeah, I want to speak truth to power, but on the same way, I don't want to just be labeled as this person that only creates content to be controversial or negative.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that.
Wither also sent some nice feedback. So did Dr. Peg. Okay, so Big Mac Punisher 56 said, first off, much respect for KT. He's really stood up and filled the pro player hole that Seaton left. He said, my question would be, is how does the rebalancing play out in your mind? And if it fails as bad as most think, what do you think that's going to be the effect on the overall health of the community?
Well, realistically, I do think that rebalancing, combined with the fact that gears are coming, is a fairly critical point in the game, which also kind of surprised me that it is happening right now, because rebalancing, this is not the first time that it's being tried, right? And as with many things, like a lot of people don't know or remember that Kabam used to try to implement gears, and they wanted that. A few old whales who no longer play the game, but they were actually invited to test out gear system back in like 2017, 2016. And pretty much all of them flat out said, if you put this in the game, we're done. So gears carry a lot of fear, and this rebalancing adds more to it. The way I see it, the entire thing about rebalancing is because developers at Kabam are being kind of stubborn on insisting that they want more wiggle room. They want to be able to experiment more with champion abilities, which, could potentially have beneficial effects in how interesting champions we have and stuff like that. And they want to have some sort of room to mop up their mistakes. At the same time, it comes with terrifying potential downsides. As in, there is virtually no other situation where you would willingly give another company your money to buy a product that the company keeps the rights to alter 6 months down the line. Like, you would not buy a laptop with the condition that, Hewlett Packard can come down knocking on your door after 6 months and either double or half the amount of RAM your laptop has based on what kind of analytics they have. It seems ridiculous. And obviously a lot of people are extremely cautious towards that. The best way I see this playing out with the balancing system is that nothing really changes, and maybe champions on average get marginally better. Let's say we don't have Super Scroll anymore on America Chavez in the game. At the same time, I also think we're going to get likely less bonkers interactions. We're going to have less Dooms and Hercules and stuff like that. I think it's going to be more of a middle-tier champion packs kind of. It's going to stabilize the level of champions that come into the game, which again can come with upsides and downsides, but we can view it as ultimately neutral. The way I look at this is there's very little for Kabam to gain if this works well, and there is everything to lose for them.
Yeah, cost-benefit analysis negative in their favor. I don't know if you saw my Kabam Broccoli interview, which started this whole series, but he did say and confirm that Kabam, their goal often with champions is to put them in the middle of the pack, because they know that if they risk nerfing a champion, the community, rightfully so with the laptop analogy, is going to be outraged, but it's easier to buff a champion if they make them kind of just like average. But at the same time, that does have an effect.
I want to say, this problem does have a relatively easy solution. This problem is and has been addressed in majority of the other gaming communities by, extending your developing times. Get a couple more staff who actually work on designing champions. Design champions not 2-3 months before they're meant to be released, but design champions 8-9 months before they're meant to be released. And then you can have, CCP members on beta server playing with them for 3 months, or you can have open betas or whatever. With betas, it's a bit more difficult because you not necessarily want to release what champions they are, but you can increase, let's say, the amount of players that have access to the CCP server and have them sign the NDAs and stuff like that. And realistically, just increase your lead time. Do it 3 to 6 months in advance, because there's absolutely nothing stopping Kabam from doing that. They don't need to design a champion 2 months before it gets released and then have no time testing it. They quite literally can and absolutely are able to design a champion even, a year before it's meant to be added in the game and test it in-house. I don't understand this obsession of using player base as beta testers.
It doesn't seem like it's worked, that's for sure. It's had more negatives than positives, like you said. This is a random question, but Kyle Dillman wants to know, and maybe he wants to eventually make a YouTube channel, I don't know. Do you ever have to do retakes of your voiceovers or commentary or even fights because something went wrong? And if so, how often do you have to do that for your YouTube channel?
Here is a thing that probably some people have realized about me, but I think a lot of viewers just don't think about something like that. I don't do scripts in general, and even if I have like a half an hour video to record, I will at best have like 5 points written down, like that I want to touch upon in what order or something like that. So the answer to that is yes, I quite often have to redo my recordings. On an average video, it's probably 2-3 recordings, and typically something happens, at the start of it. Either I get my tongue twisted or say something wrong, or it can be the most random things, like, I don't know, some noise, my girlfriend does something around the house, or she like walks in and stuff like that. And yeah, you do redo and re-record the videos. And when it comes to fights themselves, then yeah, of course, I have some ridiculous fights on my channel. For instance, I don't know, 3-star She-Hulk solo, Labyrinth of Legends Star-Lord. And I used to do that actually a lot more previously. I just kind of stopped because that kind of became the popular thing for many people to do. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is that I ended up trying that fight for like 2 days, probably, I don't know, 300-400 attempts till I finally got that solo in, right? So like a lot of these incredible, crazy, bonkers fights that you see either on my channel, well, not so much recently, but on many other channels, they do take dozens of attempts, and you put out a clean, nice video that lasts 5 minutes, and it seems super easy, but it really, really is not often.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because that also makes the average player who feels like they have to repeat fights 200-300 times a little bit more easy to relate to, shall we say. Farsi M has a really interesting question. They said, I remember you talking about how much you hated the arenas and didn't do them. What changed your mind when you started to grind? And also, if given the choice to delete one and keep one between Nick Fury and Dr. Doom from the game, which would you keep and delete, and why? So it's two different questions. Why did you start any attempts again in the arena? And then if you could only keep Nick Fury or Dr. Doom, who would it be?
Well, the thing with the arena is I still utterly dislike it, and only way I can tolerate it is actually when I really stream. I really, really don't like arena, and I didn't do it for years. The reason why I started doing it, well, there are like 3 of them that kind of can be covered very quickly. Number 1 is financial. If you don't grind, you pay. Like, if you don't grind arena, you can have to buy them units, and more than you like. Number 2, I started streaming more often, and that is a very relaxing thing to stream, because you can hardly pay any attention to arena. You can pay like 99% attention to the words that are coming out of your mouth and to your chat and things like that. So like streaming arena is like the easiest thing to stream. And quite often, even if I had planned maybe something else for stream, and if I do not feel up to it, or I just don't feel like too well in general, then you can always shift it to arena stream and know that's going to be something low effort, very easy to handle. And the last thing is also the arenas have changed themselves, and it's one thing to grind for like a few units here and there, which is obviously kind of needed, but grinding for champions, and for a really long time we only could grind for 4 stars, but Grandmaster crystals were a thing, and featured 5-star crystals were a thing. So there's very little reason to grind for the 4-star. And then up until about a year ago, I think, we could only grind for 5 stars, and at that point, I wasn't really interested in 5 stars anymore. So there's no real reason to grind for it. Now that 6 stars are in arena, obviously, initially I went for pretty much all of them. Then I kind of got burnt out with the arena and the game in general. But 6-star arena also has changed from something where initially I knew that I can grind hard for 3 days, and I might need to refresh a tiny bit here or there, to where if it's a new champion, you will have to spend like 3,000+ units, and it has become completely different beasts with the cutoffs going just higher and higher and higher and higher. And I'm not quite up to that anymore.
And then if you could only keep Dr. Doom or Nick Fury, who would it be?
It would be Nick Fury. Nick Fury. I think Doctor Doom kind of holds the Mystic class hostage. What's the point of half of these Mystic champions if you can just use Doctor Doom? And he's unreal. Doctor Doom is just unreal. Stats-wise, everything else, block penetration, so tanky. He's a pain to fight against. And I think I would get rid of Doctor Doom just because I think that Nick Fury kind of fits better in the game overall. I think Doctor Doom is noticeably too jacked up for an average champion. And I don't think, as long as he is the way he is right now, I do not think we will see more popular, better Mystic champion.
Well, and they've said they're not going to touch older champions, so I want to trust them on that.
Yeah.
So, 713 Ivani said they love your content, appreciate the work that they do, and they even saw a video where you said you're taking a step back from the game. The question was, would you ever do a second account challenge and start from fresh just to see if the love of the game came back again?
I actually did that when this whole COVID thing started. I did second account thing for a bit over a month. And I did enjoy myself for quite a while, but there are two problems with that. The first problem is that if I dedicate too much attention to second account, then I kind of feel that I'm neglecting my main one. And if you have worked so long on your main account and, you're kind of trying to get every last bit of resources, stuff, or whatever value accumulated on it, it's not an overly pleasant feeling, at the very least to me. It's kind of, I feel uneasy taking away attention from my main account for longer periods of time. And the second thing is I enjoyed my new account challenge and screams, and I had a good amount of fun up until the ISO shortage came up. And that kind of crushed my enthusiasm for that entire thing, because I was progressing in a game, I was getting some champions that I wanted or some that I didn't, whatever. But that feeling that I have everything that I need, and ISO is the thing that I struggle. I even had gold and catalysts and champions that I wanted, and I had champions to carry on, exploring Act 6 because I got with it to point where I was Cavalier and I did first path of Labyrinth. And that ISO thing just was kind of really crushing, knowing that you have rank 1, level 1 champions that you really, really, really want to and have to rank up because you get some, staple champions, so to speak. And you know that you're not going to be able to do it for a really long time just because of the ISO.
Yeah, no kidding. And you can't grind arena in 2 accounts. You're going crazy grind arena in just 1 account.
And new accounts actually have more problem with arena because you don't have many champions ranked up to begin with, so you can't get many points. You don't have good mastery setup, so every point you do get, is taking much, much, much longer. Like grinding with an account, my main account, arena is 5 times more time to unit efficient than it is with a new account.
That makes sense. Riley Griffin had a 2-part question. He wants to know, will you actually quit the game if they botch relics, and do you trust your source who said Kabam will monetize relics like they do Cavalier Crystals?
Well, yes, I will, because, that's just... Here is the utmost truth. I have been struggling fair amount with my attachment to the game, and, it isn't that I want to leave it. It's not something that I think for daily or anything like that. But I can very easily see this game carrying on without me at some point, pending a couple more, disastrous decisions.
Wow. Okay.
Second thing about whether I trust my source, yes, I do, because it was a Kabam employee that said it on my stream. He was chatting on my stream when we were discussing relics and the potential implementation ways. But one thing that was quite obvious that, there will be a new crystal that you pay your units for and you try your RNG for better relics.
Hard pass on that for me. Cha-Cha J-I-O-1. This is a pretty good question to follow that. So let's say you were Kabam CEO, the real CEO for one day. What changes would you make and why?
It's a hard question to answer realistically. It's a very easy question to answer, like, ideologically. I'd make the game better. I would, change the arenas and make it top 300, and I would refresh all of the 3-day solo and summoner advancement rewards, and do all of these amazing positive things and stuff like that. Reality is a lot more gray and white. If I was Kabam CEO, I would have shareholders that would give me instructions, and there would be realistically only that many things I could immediately do. So this is, again, obviously everyone sitting here thinking wants to make pro player changes, and that would be exactly what I try to do. But whether there is something that I would actually be able to do immediately, or the things that I currently want to, reality is often disappointing. But the first absolutely immediate changes is that input system, it 100% has to be addressed. Balancing changes, I'd scrap that. On my personal thoughts about the future of the game, I would push solo competitive mode as hard as I can. I would also, revamp completely their PR department, including probably forum moderator approach or community management, because I do think that there is a real huge lack of trust and information flow from Kabam to the player base. Things like, dev diaries, long overdue, for instance. They are not doing nowhere near good enough job hyping up upcoming things in the game. And they do have a plan. They know what they're going to be doing, like, throughout the year, for instance, right? Why don't they, for instance, try to release kind of like March update? Is going to be insane. You can see the biggest changes to the contest ever, and every couple of days release a couple of posters to get people amped up, to give things to look forward to. And I think that is one of the bigger problems with Kabam. There is not enough information and positive messaging coming out of Kabam.
Yeah, they're shooting themselves in the foot a lot by how they run their
with everything.
Yeah, no, that's I've been saying that for years too.
And they often, even if they have decent ideas, or let's say questionable ideas, they just make it a lot worse for themselves. This whole balancing situation itself, it would be at least 40% better digested in community if they had not touched buff program. Or even better, if they had said that we are gonna, try and buff 3 champions a month, if we can again. We're gonna do 2 definitely whilst balancing, but potentially 3 or something like that. And if they had kept buffing of the champions, this whole balancing thing would obviously still be extremely controversial, but you would still have a very significant portion of players who are really unhappy right now that wouldn't be as bothered.
Sure. Well, believe it or not, we are already over 35 minutes into the interview, and so we're already almost running out of time. So,
my apologies.
No apologies needed. I think your answers are thoughtful, and the more detailed, the better in terms of things. But because of that, I wanted to make sure we have plenty of time to get to a difficult part of the conversation, one that you've been gracious enough to be willing to talk about. And it's something that normally, this is the first time in an interview that I'm going to bring up another content creator's name. But because so many of the questions revolved around this, and they were asked, in a pretty respectful manner, I didn't delete them. I didn't shy away from them. And so this is the part of the interview that I get nervous about, though, because I feel like, kind of like what you just talked about with your videos, like, we've talked about all the positive changes we can make for the game, but then people might just remember this part of the interview. So I guess we can't help that if they do. But for those of you who don't know, if I had $1 or KT1 had $1 for every time Ilac skills brought us up in a video, we probably could have our money paid for purchases for the game for the next 2 years, easy. Maybe retirement for all I know. And so it started, and this is a guy that I considered a friend. He laughed at that word once and said we were coworkers, and so rightfully so. But a lot of the questions that are in the community page, from Charles Walls to Laplace's Demon to Frojo34 mostly, wants to know, first off, what happened between you and Ilac?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure because, as far as I'm concerned, I didn't particularly kind of like did anything or twist I don't know. Either way, the story is fairly straightforward. We used to be, acquaintances. I stumbled upon like Super Gaming streams, and he was like one of the content creators that kind of hanged out in that bubble. It was like Katie Candy, Chris LaFleur, stuff like that. There were quite a few content creators, and so that's how I met them. That was before I actually started creating content myself. And also, coincidentally, also part of the reason I stumbled on their streams, because they were doing these kind of like late evening drinking streams on weekends and stuff like that. And I wasn't at the best place in my life myself at that point. And I had long kind of had some issues with, I'm not going to say that I have had like huge issues with alcohol, but I had definite issues with kind of like partying and never knowing my limits exactly. I was never really the guy who was going to go out and have 3 beers and come home, at 11. I was much more the person who kept on going till the morning. But either way, that's how I met him. We were acquaintances. Then somewhere along, and I also donated quite a lot of money to his channel and Super Gaming's channel and stuff like that. And somewhere along the way, I started making videos myself towards the end of it. And I also wasn't, financially as capable anymore. So that was the first time that I could kind of feel an attitude adjustment. And as I was creating content already, I like to have quite a lot of input on what kind of videos should or should not be made. And I think that was the last kind of proper conversation I had with him, where I said that, I don't care, I'm going to say what I think.
So he would tell you, would he tell you not to make certain videos?
Yeah, well, basically he insisted that, these are the type of videos that you should make, these are the type of videos you shouldn't make, kind of things like that. And I wasn't the only person who he tried to do that with.
Sure.
And, well, after that, we didn't really speak to each other for a while, but we were together in some YouTuber chat rooms where he, for about half a year, every other week or so, threatened to quote-unquote expose me for about the fact that I used to play this game for other people for money, which is true, which I never denied. That is something I used to do for, year and a half?
So varying degrees. And that was a question by Jorge, Correa, and Frojo, because you have said that you were a Merc, and you don't have to get into like super specifics regarding money, but do you think mercing and piloting is cheating and is a financial way to make quite a bit of money in that regard?
Yeah, I do. It kind of also depends like how good you are and obviously what kind of people you can get in touch with. But like my own personal attitude towards that obviously has changed over time, because initially when I started doing it myself, it was as harmless as it could be. Nobody ever even mentioned that. Nobody knew the term merc or mercenary. It was, completely different attitude towards it, and you were not ever kind of like thought of as like, a bad human being or something like that. It was just something that my friend asked me for help. I helped him. Then my friend said his friends that my flatmate did this for me because I couldn't do it myself. And then his friend started messaging me, and I said I helped my friend, but I don't know you. I have better things to do with my time. And they said like, okay, I'm going to send you, I don't know, $20 for that fight, something like that. And it kind of started like that slowly, and it escalated a bit. Obviously, I do now, in the grand scheme of things, think it's a very bad thing, but also I think of it now as something that's really bad because I know how much people have invested over the time and over the years, and just because it's become a lot more competitive scene. Initially, when I started with that, there was a lot less of that. And I'm not going to say that anything that I did is, obviously good or gracious or virtuous or anything like that. But first of all, you never are taught to look at yourself as the villain of the story. You're always the hero of your own story, right? Mm-hmm. And the second thing is, initially, it genuinely was about as harmless as it can be. It's like, do this for me, I'm going to buy you a beer. And, then you realize that you can earn quite a lot of beers because there are quite a lot of people who are actually messaging themselves to you. And once it kind of got serious, that's also when I kind of started thinking more about the implications of it. And towards the end of it, it was much more known thing in community. And unfortunately, there is this very big crossover of people who log in other players' account and play the game, and also with a lot of extremely unscrupulous people who do much worse things with credit cards, modding, botting, and things like that, which is something that I have always tried my best to stay as far away from as I can. But that all has kind of been mixed up together. If you do one thing, you have done them all kind of attitude these days. And all of that happened, I think at this point, about 4 or 5 years ago. I think about 4 years ago.
So since then I have... You stopped doing that before you started your YouTube channel?
I stopped doing that around the same time. It was pretty much the kind of... Yeah, that was when I started my YouTube channel, when I stopped doing it.
When did you realize, because of the way Ilac was going after you and others, that your past was going to catch up to you and you were going to need to address this?
Well, again, I never really hid it. Anybody who asked me directly, and who didn't do it obviously extremely combative and stuff like that, I was always fairly open to it. All my teammates always knew it, all the people in the chats always knew it and stuff like that. So part of me, what's the best way to explain it, didn't even think about it because I didn't think it's a secret that I have been trying to hide or something like that. But obviously, as with pretty much anything in life, you don't necessarily want your worst decisions or your embarrassing moments advertised on your forehead. If you go on a first date, you're not gonna introduce yourself and go over all the embarrassing things that you have experienced in your life, right? You're gonna try to present yourself from the best side, so to speak.
There's actually an SNL skit that is surrounded by that very thing where O.J. Simpson asked the person not to Google him before.
So, anyway. I think I have seen that one. But either way, I realized it fairly early because, as I said, he kept threatening with quote-unquote exposing me and making exposed videos. And every time he did that, I said, just go and do it,
And he's benefiting monetarily from that. I mean, every time he brings you up and puts you in a thumbnail or puts you in the title, his views go up. And so it is, again, an outrage.
Honestly, as far as that goes, I genuinely don't care if he's specifically doing that just to financially benefit or that is his moral crusade. If I'm being absolutely truthful, and this is without any mean thoughts or anything like that, I genuinely think the man needs help. I don't think a happy human being behaves the way he has. I know I have my own personal issues and things like that, but it's hard for me to imagine myself in a mental state where I would do the things that he and some of his closest followers appear to be doing, which, again, is something that's fairly typical these days online, where you stalk somebody and you wait for them to misspeak just so you can, put up something that you could point a finger at and stuff like that. And in general, I just don't think a mentally healthy, happy human being does that. And without, again, any evil intention in mind, I hope he's okay. I haven't noticed any videos, or nobody has sent me any of his videos in a while, but because I unsubscribed from his channel a really, really long time ago. But truly, from bottom of my heart, I wish all the best to every human being, indiscriminately, that I don't know. I am not the type of person who wishes ill upon people, even if I disagree with them, even if I personally dislike them. He's definitely a person that I, never want to interact on any kind of personal level, and I would much rather see him going than coming. But at the same time, just as a human being, I hope he's okay. And that's it. As far as anything that he has said for me and stuff like that, there's a lot of tries, a lot of lies, half-truths, and, a lot of spin on that. And I was quite upset and resentful for quite a while, but quite a long time ago, I think now, about 2-3 years, I just stopped caring. It's not up to me to change his life. It's not up to me to change his mind. I hope he's doing okay with whatever he's doing. And on a personal level, I have very little to no interest in, following any kind of things like that.
Well, and I don't know if you've seen the classic Christopher Nolan Dark Knight movie, but some people can't be reasoned with. Some people do just like to watch the world burn. And I kind of view him as the MCOC Joker, and he probably takes pride in that. And I think that if he wasn't able to stalk my channel or your channel, other people waiting to sick the vultures on whenever we make a mistake, he would probably be pretty miserable. And so that's what makes him happy. And I've just kind of been like, all right, man, if my mistakes make you happy, then at least I'm making you happy somehow. But the final question regarding the concept of cheating or hacking, was there any truth to you leaving NY718 because of the Alliance being involved in any cheating or hacking? And this is from Coy Rollins.
Actually, no.
Okay.
Actually, no.
Well, there you go.
Look, I'm not going to say that I know what every single person is up to and whatever has happened in PMs. And I'm fully open to the fact that there were things, done, but they were not done like openly, publicly, and things like that. The point of me leaving NY718 was actually about that boycott situation, and that wasn't just it. When I joined NY718, and it was the most capable alliance, war alliance, which was something that I was highly interested in. And over a year, they had quite drastically shifted their focus to Prestige and Alliance Quest, and that was also reflected in the people that they recruited. They recruited people who weren't necessarily as disciplined or skilled or, caring about the game. They recruited more and more wealthier people, which I'm not one of, and, I can't relate really there. But as that shift in Alliance happened, I felt less and less like that's the Alliance that I joined, and less and less for the reasons that I joined it, kind of thing. So basically, when I joined NY718, it was completely different alliance with completely different goals and objectives than it was by the time I left it. And I'm not saying anything bad to the people who I spent my time with in NY718. There are some awesome people, and I still keep in touch with some of them, and they're great human beings and all that other good stuff. But it's just that the trigger was effectively the Alliance attitude towards their own role in the game when it came to that whole boycott situation, whatever else. And, we had a lot of internal discussions there. That was kind of like the last trigger, the match that lighted up. But the actual gas that had been filling the room for the explosion, so to speak, had been happening over a longer period of time. The Alliance just transforming from Alliance that cares about Alliance war and skilled play to Alliance that cares about prestige and money and your ability to spend in the game. And nobody directly said that I need some sort of spending minimums and things like that. But, you can just feel it. And also when your teammates are all in the chat kind of talking about all the supercars that they bought and, their second summer homes and things like that. And then you don't have that. It's just not, team camp anymore. It's not a place that you feel like among your teammates.
Yeah. Well,
kind of feel on the outside of it.
thank you for clearing that up. Speaking of Alliance War, you just brought that up. There is still this assumption that a variety of different methods are used to cheat at the very top for those still very, very good rewards. Do you think there's anything to do that Kabam could do further to disincentivize or stop Alliance War cheating, especially at the top? And this is a question from DVD.
Where there is value, unfortunately, there will be things like that. I do think that obviously there are more things that Kabam can do, just like, for instance, they have started doing with arenas more actively and stuff like that. But, there will always be something that slides through the cracks. And the lengths that some people are willing to go to are fairly terrifying. And what's the best way to put it? There is cheating in Alliance War because there are valuable resources and items to be won, or even just like prestige or something like that. It's just same as there is so much cheating in gifting event because there is so much at stake. Once Alliance War presents actual meaningful, tangible rewards, there will always be people who try to cheat with it. And, you can get rid of fair share of it, but in theory, and this is also very hard to kind of control and police because a lot of people have the luxury of representing, let's say, even the same city or something like that, and or the same country, and then it becomes a lot harder to track. There are people who literally send out phones, their actual phones, to their teammates for piloting and stuff like that, because Kabam doesn't ban for multi-logs, for instance. If you log in from one device to another, they're not going to ban you for that.
Sure. So people...
And Alliance War is like the one place where they do pay more attention to it, but I'm not even sure how they're doing it at all. I have, again, long since been out of...
how people cheat?
Yeah, basically. Because obviously I was interested in the subject whilst I was playing for other people because I didn't want to get other people in trouble. So I had to know the things that I can and cannot do. But I have long since stopped doing that, so I actually don't know any information that I have is outdated by 3 or 4 years, basically, is what I'm saying. Well, but at the same time, you can see that there's always somehow, some way that somebody figures out how to make it possible. And then that's just the reality of life. When there's a lot of value involved, people who want it the most will find ways to get there.
Absolutely.
So there 100% are cheating happening in some alliances. That's one of the reasons why I'm New Nation, because I do believe they are one of the most straightforward alliances at the high levels of the game. And I do think that more often than not, these days especially, it is a hush-hush kind of thing. It is much more of a personal thing, not an open alliance thing. I think it's much more that one teammate, he doesn't want to let the team down or whatever his excuses or reasons are, and he finds a friend or somebody that he knows, and he doesn't necessarily tell his teammates or officers anything about it. That, at the very least, has been my experience with the more recent dramas, where, where one person, you never know what your teammates are up to 100%, and it's impossible to completely keep tabs on 30 people. So I do think that it has gotten a lot better in top tier alliances, for most of them. A lot cleaner compared to how it was, let's say, 2 years ago. And it has shifted from it being a team thing to it being a personal thing. But it still does exist. I do think that there will always be people who attempt it. And unfortunately, I do think because of the bad history and because of the bad open cheating in the teams, that has kind of remained to be the dogma, that if your alliance get docked, you're all filthy cheaters, kind of thing. When in reality, let's say 28 people had nothing to do with it, didn't know anything or didn't suspect anything, kind of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that happen plenty of times. I appreciate your honesty on that. As we start to land the plane of the interview, because you've already been so gracious with your time, King Lewis wants to know, it's kind of 3 different questions. First off, what is your take on other major YouTubers? Do you still watch other major YouTubers and enjoy other YouTubers' content?
Well, first of all, if you want to and if you are willing to, you can take another, 10 or whatever minutes if there are still plenty of questions. But let's try quick firing them. Let's try to give quick, concise answers.
Rapid fire, right?
About other YouTubers, yes, I don't watch all of them. I'm not going to lie. I don't think that there is YouTubers that I watch religiously, like that I watch every single thing that they upload. I am subscribed to a fairly decent chunk. At the same time, in the recent year, I have unsubscribed for a fairly decent chunk for one reason or another.
Okay.
But there are quite a lot of YouTubers that I do watch. And obviously, I watch your videos, Prof, even though, again, I often disagree with you, but I still want to see what you have to say.
And that's what I want people to say. If you only watch my channel to agree with me, it's not a channel, it's a cult. And I don't want to create any cult followers. So please disagree.
Yeah, exactly. And full hand to heart here kind of moment. I do often disagree to the conclusions that you draw or on some subjects. For instance, your recent Ultron video. I think you uploaded video about that Ultron bug.
Yeah. And you like it.
I think it was fairly off topic.
Okay.
Because it gave me an impression that you probably haven't used Ultron too much yourself, and you're just kind of going by the generic outlook of the situation. But at the same time, I am interested in what other people have to say and different opinions. But there is one exception to that, and that the biggest exception, and the people that I do like to unsubscribe from recently is if I know what they're going to say before they upload the video. And that, unfortunately, largely goes to Kabam's PR hand, because there's a lot of predictability, and there are a few content creators who are effectively all the same, no matter what happens. That
so you
Kabam
mean,
good, Champions awesome, super mega triple beyond god tier damage, and things like that. And if that has been kind of like a norm for a while on any given channel, that, then every single update is awesome, every single decision Kabam has made is awesome, every single champion is super interesting and exciting, then I probably don't watch your videos anymore. And it's nothing personal, it's just that I don't find it interesting, because before the topic comes up, I already know what those people have to say.
Definitely. Well, and
other than that, I do enjoy most of the bigger YouTubers. I like also Daddy Longlegs, special shout out to him. He's a very interesting, smaller content creator. Vegas channel is quite awesome. He's been growing well. And there's a fair decent amount.
By the way, kids, I tell my students this too. Constructive criticism is needed. I need it. I'm sure he needs it, because there's always truth in it. And also, you don't want to get a God complex with any public forum to think that you're above feedback or criticism. Now, obviously, there's a big difference between criticism and something like that.
Obviously, we're all human, and none of us is protected from making mistakes or having bad takes. And the beauty of it is humans are creatures that are capable of taking in new information and adapting your own opinions to things. Like, I have a video that I'm not taking down on purpose where after a buff, I'm fairly critical of Kingpin, and I, praise Mallman over it, but I'm really critical of Kingpin in that video. That video is about a year and a half old now, and I do not think like that at all
has
anymore.
Not aged well, right?
It hasn't aged well in a sense, but I'm not taking it down for that purpose, because that is how I felt when those buffs were very, very new. And if people want to know how I feel about Kingpin now, watch my skill top-rated champion video, and I'm putting Kingpin in top 3 skill champions. I have spent time with that champion, I have acquired more information, and I have adjusted my opinion.
There you go. You've evolved yourself. Second King Lewis's question: in retrospect, do you think patch 12.0 nerfs were good for the game?
Actually, no. I am this close to making a video about it, because every single goal that was listed, I actually have 12.0 patch notes right now in front of me. And some of the things that they list as a reasoning as to why they're doing the changes just make absolutely no sense, because they went ahead and did it anyways.
With 6 stars.
Like very quick description, for instance, they wanted us to use large variety of the champions except from a select few. Well, that happened to the game anyways for a really, really long time, where it was Quake and Ghost and everything, and they still have Quake, Ghost, Core was Doom kind of thing. You don't have a huge variety of champions that we clear content with. And they did not succeed with that. For instance, they also said that they did not like that you could max out on stats, which was all the reason why we went from percentage-based stats to numerical values. But they said that they do not like that you can basically get a guaranteed critical hit by just having some, few precision notes and stuff like that. But guess what? Then now we have a ton of champions who have guaranteed crits in their abilities written in. So most of the things that are listed as goals and reasons for 12.0, they have ignored, destroyed, or just, went ahead and done anyways. So no, I don't think it was particularly needed. I can agree to Scarlet Witch nerf and Thor nerf, I guess, but everything else aside from that.
Well, and I can agree to Thor and Scarlet Witch to a certain percent, but not the percent they did it. Like, if they were storing them back to 20% of where they were before.
Oh, yeah, I'd still like to see both of them more powerful than they are right now, but I'm just saying that not leaving the way they were, I can easily justify that.
But something like Doctor Strange, total joke.
Doctor Strange could have remained. Black Widow could have remained,
100%. They weren't breaking the game. And then people forget that there were even, like, smaller nerfs in that patch, like to Captain America.
Yeah.
Follow-up question with that. First off, a bunch of people, including Timo4Reals, just want to know on the record, because of course they do recognize the accent, where are you from? I should have started
with that. Latvia. It's a Latvian accent. It's in Eastern Europe. And the accent is slightly bit more strange than it normally would be, because in Latvia they teach us American English, and I learned a lot of my English from movies or video games. But since I moved to UK, I have been learning English with English vocabulary and slightly different pronunciations and word choices. So it's an Eastern European accent with American base that's rounded up in England.
Boy, that sounds like quite the dating profile. How many years were you in Latvia?
I moved when I was 19, so I came to UK when I was 19 years old.
So basically your whole upbringing was Latvia. Wow.
Yeah.
Have you traveled to the United States ever? Yeah.
No, I have never been to the United States.
Well, maybe New York City Comic Con 2023. Who knows?
Maybe.
You never know. Winding down, there's also been a rumor, and I always like to clear things up, that you didn't actually buy your account. Can you put that to bed?
What? No, that's my own account. You can, even from the initial videos, you can see that it was my first rank 5 was played. I think when I started recording videos, I had like 1 or 2 rank 5s, and everything upwards from that you can see historically on my channel pretty much. So obviously I didn't create content initially, but you can see that all the account progression, I believe, from about 1 million hero base rating to about 4.3 million hero base rating, which has happened in, since I created videos, that you can just check up on that and follow that.
Well, there you go. It's actually, there's proof. Dean D had a follow-up to what I just said. Have you ever felt a desire to compete in the Comic-Con competitions, especially pre-pandemic?
Slightly at times, yeah. I would like that.
I think the community would love to see that, especially you going up against Legacy, Invincible. The titans of the community going against each other. I'll grab the popcorn and sit on the sidelines where I belong.
For full disclosure, I do think that there are plenty of people that are more skilled than I am. I'm fully okay to admit that. For instance, I do think Legacy is much more naturally gifted player than I am and things like that. But luckily for me, and part of the reason why I like this game is because your actual, let's call it, playing prowess comes from multiple factors. One of them is exactly how fast your reflexes are and stuff like that, and how well you can, control the fight. But then there is a lot of how well you know the champions, and particularly also like how your own personal account obviously looks like. And so there is kind of quite a lot of mix in between the knowledge of the game and the champions and the interactions, your total sum effort of your work, time, and your money spent, and then obviously how well you can play naturally. So when it comes to actually playing the game, I don't think I'm, all that great I do think that I have fairly decent knowledge base about the champions, and I have been fairly persistent in growing my account and things like that. So that kind of helps me to get a leg up at times.
Definitely. Virendra has something, given the amount of likes on it, I feel like it might be an inside joke I don't just get, but will you upload Havoc and Nimrod gameplay videos?
It's just kind of like an inside joke because they have been asking for a while, and I kind of promised and didn't. But yeah, I will. Now I definitely will.
Boom, we got it on record, Virendra. The Mad Hatter wants to know, do you have a favorite boss that Kabam's designed?
Favorite boss? It was the second Nameless Thanos, the one that they put in Cav EQ, where you could fight him infinitely, basically. Just, when they did that entire quest, is just Nameless Thanos.
Oh.
And he had those phases. It was like one of the first versions of what we are commonly getting now, where Thanos boss kind of goes through phases and changes his abilities. Like now it's fairly common with Grandmaster and Gwen Master and...
Was that the first one that we saw reverse controls with? That one?
Yeah, he also had reverse controls. He wasn't actually the first Nameless Thanos that we had to fight. There were two Nameless Thanos before that in some other event.
Right.
But then they made like the second version of that Nameless Thanos, and it was Cab EQ boss, and we could fight him. He was like the entire final quest of the Cab EQ. That fight in particular, that also was the Thanos I uploaded quite a lot of videos on. How to fight him and stuff like that.
Definitely.
Quite fun.
Well, I wanted to wrap this up because we've already gone 11 minutes over and you've been beyond generous with your time, and thank you again for that. You've talked a lot in this interview about your highs, your lows, your regrets. Obviously, you've grown a lot as a human being, and my guess is you'll look back on this interview in a few years and think, man, I've grown a lot since that interview on February 6, 2022. What would you say to people who maybe sometimes struggle with regrets and have a hard time beating themselves up because there are things publicly or otherwise that they just can't seem to get past because they're not proud of their past?
Not a single person that I know is 100% satisfied with every decision that they have made. And none of us will have lived our perfect lives. I can guarantee that not a single person listening to this does not have things that they wish they could have done otherwise, things that they wish that they didn't say, things that they wish they did say. And I think, my personal approach to all of that is when kind of bad thoughts start haunting you, because we all have those random nights when we're laying awake at midnight and it's like, and you remember something from 8th grade, which is like, oh my God, it was so embarrassing. Point is, nobody really cares about you until you make them care. Nobody's lying awake thinking about their neighbor and, what kind of bad things have happened or what kind of bad things he has done. You are stressing yourself out, and only thing you can do in your life is just try to make your next decision a better one. When you have a next choice to make, do you want to eat this, crappy hamburger or something moderately more helpful? Or do you want to initiate an argument if somebody insults you or potentially de-escalate the situation? Just try to make sure that the next choice that you make is not one of those that you could potentially look back and wish that you didn't do. Sometimes you will still make them. None of us are protected from mistakes. None of us can make every right decision. But all of us can try to make better decisions.
Well, I will.
That's all there is to it.
I appreciate that perspective. I will think of you tonight when I have my bacon cheeseburger. I felt like there was this moment where I was like, does he know what I'm having for dinner? That's hilarious. Well, I want to thank you again.
But it's true, though. Like, nobody cares as much about you as you care about yourself.
Yeah, and nobody notices your imperfections more than you do. Right?
Yeah, I didn't mean it in the sense that nobody loves you or nobody cares about you. I mean, like, nobody dissects yourself or goes over your embarrassing moments. Just you. It's literally just you.
Well, from where you're from, how you started, long before YouTube, what got you into the game, the highs and lows of what somebody goes through when they have the opportunity to Merc, Ilac. You've covered so much in this hour and 15 minutes, and I just want to thank you. He didn't dodge a single question. He didn't say anything was off limits, and he knew that there was going to be some controversy, and I was going to put my journalism hat on and be critical. And I appreciate your openness, because whether or not you've dealt with that or just the general concept of regret, I think this is an interview that could help some people.
Last quick thing that I wanted to kind of point out to people, that life's hard and life's meant to be hard, but remember that it always is made better with kindness, with attention, and things that matter are the people around you in your life, your girlfriend, your spouse, your family, your kids, anything else, not some internet troll, not what some politician thinks about a particular thing, not what somebody said to you or to somebody else on Twitter. We are all living in the most connected world as it has ever been, and we're bombarded with scandalous information, good and bad.
Amen. Well,
90% of it is fake, and it doesn't matter. What matters is you and people in your life.
Amen. Look at that. Part-time YouTuber, part-time preacher, KT1. Longest interview we've had to date, and we could have gone longer. Thank you again so much. Sorry if I didn't make it to your question. I kind of separated it out in chunks so that I got to every general point, and obviously people also repeated questions. But thank you for your time. I'm excited to see what the subscribers think of this interview, and as always, I'm honored that you agreed to this interview in the first place.
My pleasure.
Take care, YouTube.